If you want to learn how to take your vocals from this
You gon' come over, I told you twice.
to this
You gon' come over, I told you twice. I'm gon' get in and gon' get it tonight.
then this video is for you. I'm going to be showcasing 10 vocal mixing tips that will help you take your vocal mixes to the next level. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first tip that I have for you is when EQing your vocals, less is more. So what I mean by that is with my EQ right here, as you can see, it's very simple and there's not a whole lot going on. The simplicity of this EQ includes the techniques that I'm using. So right here, all I have is a simple high pass to cut out the low end, and then some simple frequency chops right here in the middle, and then just a simple boost in the high end right there. Now, why I say less is more is because if I have a super complicated EQ with super huge frequency dips like this or anything like that, it just makes the EQ overbearing and the vocal is going to sound less natural. Now, the type of EQ you do to your vocal heavily depends on what type of vocals you want to mix. However, I think the simpler EQs are the ones that go on to be hits in the industry. Okay, tip number 2 is to have a parallel compression bus that will make your vocals more enhanced and louder within the mix. So I'll show you exactly how I do this. So once I have my basic mix finished right here, this has all my plugins on it. I make a separate track right here. So I have this parallel compression bus right here, and what I have on it is a compressor. So this compressor is very important. As you can see, I have the gain cranked up to about 17.4 decibels right there. The ratio at 7:1 right there. And then the threshold I crushed down to about negative 28 decibels. And I'll explain why my compressor settings are like this in a second. And then the rest of the plugins right here, a sound goodizer, which is basically like a vocal enhancer, and then chorus and phaser. Those are my settings right there. These you don't have to add for a parallel compression bus, but they're just cool effects that I like to add to the vocal. So yeah, anyways, we're gonna go back to the main basic mix track right here, select it, and then go down to the little arrow down here at the bottom under the parallel compression track right here, and then left click that arrow. Now what that is gonna do, as you can see, is it's gonna route the main mix to the parallel compression bus right there. And the reason we had these compression settings is because it's going to create a compressed double of the vocal. So I'm going to turn the parallel compression bus all the way down like so and mix it in. Okay, moving on to tip number 3, and this one is one that a lot of people might not know, is that if you go into your auto-tune plugin right here, this is just the stock FL Studio one. It's called Pitcher. There is a setting up here in the top left that you can see. It says min 110 Hertz. Now what that means is when I have 100 Hertz selected, the minimum Hertz value that the auto-tune plugin is going to pick up is 110 Hertz. So it's going to pick up any notes above 110 Hertz, but anything below that, it's not going to pick up at all. It's just going to go back to the raw vocal and not put any auto-tune on that. So right here, if you have a little bit of a lower voice, you're going to probably want to select a lower Hertz setting right there. So from probably 80, and if you have a super low voice, like 55 Hertz. But if you have a little bit of a higher voice, you can go even higher up into 110 and 170 Hertz right there. But yeah, especially for people with lower voices, make sure that you're toggling this thing down to probably like 80 Hertz because it'll allow more of your range to be picked up by the auto-tune plugin. Okay, and for tip number 4, don't be afraid to use stock plugins. Even though there are some better options out there, if you have good methods and techniques for how you mix your vocals, then stock plugins will do just fine. And I have a couple videos that show exactly how to do this. So if you want to, you can watch that right after this video. Okay, now for tip number 5, and this is another one that maybe not a ton of people know about, is use a noise gate on your vocals. Now what this does is it basically cuts out the background sounds in the vocal recording. So any like low rumble or background noises like your fan or something that's just in the background of the recording that you just don't want in the recording, you can use a noise gate. So in FL Studio, there's a stock plugin called Fruity Limiter. And all you do is you go top left right there, click on the little arrow, go to presets, and then go to noise gate right there. Now what this does is it creates a low threshold right there. So basically what you're going to be doing is cutting out any noise below that threshold. Okay, so for tip number 6, this is one that I use every single time when figuring out the levels of how loud I want my vocal to be on top of the beat, is I play the song at a low volume level on my headphones, and then I level out the vocals on that low headphone volume. Now what the low headphone volume will allow you to do is it'll cut out the bass, which sometimes can drown out the vocal, and that leads you to turn up the vocal a lot more than it actually needs to be. So turning the headphone volume down is a good way to level out your vocals and your beat. So yeah, make sure you're using this when figuring that out. Okay, so for tip number 7, we're going to be moving on to reverb right here. And one thing that you really want to take into account when doing your reverb on your vocals is how long the reverb is lasting for. So a really cool setting that I like to use to tweak this is the decay. Now this will be on most reverb plugins right here. So the decay is what makes the reverb last for longer. So if I turn it all the way up, the reverb really lasts for a long time and it kind of drowns out the song. So you don't want to turn it up that much, but depending on the type of beat you're using and the type of song you're going for, you can turn it up how you like. So make sure you're using this setting to get the best listening experience out of your reverb. Okay, tip number 8 is use a de-esser. Now what a de-esser is it basically de-esses the vocal. It takes away those high S, T, and P sounds that really come through in the vocal, and it really cleans up the vocal, and it allows you to take your vocal from a harsh, raspy sounding vocal to a professional level vocal mix. So right here, I have this plugin within FL Studio called Maximus, and then what we're gonna do is click on that, go to the top left corner again, click on the arrow, go to presets, and then de-esser narrowband. So this is gonna allow you to de-ess the vocals, and this little yellow part right in here is the part you're gonna be tweaking. So the farther you bring it down, the farther those S's are going to be turned down within the vocal mix. So just like anything within vocal mixing, you're going to want to try to find that sweet spot. Okay, coming in with tip number 9 right here. It is very important that you use multiple EQs and multiple compressors on your vocal, because if you add only one EQ and one compressor, and then you add just a ton of effects on top of that, you're going to lose the balance of the vocal that you created with the compressor and the EQ. So as you can see here on the right, I have one EQ. The first EQ is a very big subtractive EQ, having a big cutoff in the low end right here, and then a couple dips in the middle and high end, and then my main compressor right here. Those are my settings. But as you can see, I add the fresh air plugin right here. So after I add that kind of brightness to the vocal, I do want to tone it back a little bit. So I did add another EQ right on top of that. So use the EQs and the compressors as a tool to help balance out your vocal and keep it at that professional level. Trust me, this will help you out a lot. And finally, with tip number 10, don't be afraid to try new things with your vocal mix. I've created so many different vocal mixes and tried so many different techniques within my journey of mixing vocals, and it is very important that you don't just stick to one thing and stay there. You have to try new things and get creative with it. Find something that you like and build off of it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. Also, if you're into kind of improving the sound of your music and your vocal mixes, then you should check out my website where I have 3 available vocal presets. One of them is completely free. It's called the Caleb James Lead Vocal Preset. So yeah, I'll have that linked in the description. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Get it tonight, baby, just come here.